Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the October meeting of the Metro North Long Island Committee. Before we start with public comments, I just want you to know that after consultation with the co-chair, the order in which various items will be taken up today have been changed. That will be a permanent aspect of the book starting next month, but since we only decided that after the book was published for this month, you will see some things taken out of order. We will get to everything, but the order in which we get to things will be different, and you'll see that as we go forward in the meeting. So I don't want people to think we skipped something. We didn't skip it. We just changed the order in which we will get to it. With that, we will start the meeting as always with public comments. First speaker is Murray Bowden.
Good morning. Welcome to the new world. This is not the world of a month ago, it's the world of tomorrow. All of you staff at the table there should be here next month with a computer in front of you. The day of that paper is over, and if you haven't got the message, think about it. Chief,
thank you.
It's time you got out of the uniform and put on a suit, symbolically to change the way we think about things around here. Oh, I'm sorry, board members, let me get your attention. I expect most of the board members to have a computer in front of them next month and to have read the information the night before, because I am going to demand that the staff...
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask, are these comments on point with what we have on the agenda today?
This is about the agenda.
Mr. Chairman,
let Mr.
This
Bowden
is how
finish.
the agenda plays
let him
out.
finish.
And whether or not you like it, I'm going to say it. That it's time that staff stop reading what's on the paper and give opinion. You start off your presentation by saying, the numbers are in the book. We hope you read them last night, but that's not necessary. And this is what they mean. We're interested in what you think about the numbers, not the actual numbers. This has changed in other situations, and it's going to change here too. The old way was, hey, we didn't pay any attention to whether they blew the train whistle or not. Symbolically, for the two railroads, it's how do you stop the train whistle from blowing at Scarsdale? If you can't understand that that's outdated and needs to be changed, symbolically you have to be proactive. The chief has to wear a suit. The staff has to have a computer in front of them and stop using this paper. And Howard and Helena have to go and say, hey guys, why are we blowing the whistle? Chris Christie stopped the ARC tunnel. He stopped it because it was wrong. He took responsibility in changing the way we think about things. It is your responsibility to take and think about where we need to go and what's important today. Because what was important yesterday, no longer valid. When one of you starts to read the numbers off that piece of paper, I'm going to jump up over there and say, you're out of order. We don't need the numbers. They should have been read last night so that the board can ask you intelligent questions. I'm going to do it once at every meeting to symbolize the fact that staff needs a computer in front of them, that the numbers do not have to be read.
Mr.
And
Chairman,
you have to,
really?
I'm sorry, who's addressing me? I can't see.
Nobody is. Are you almost finished, Mr. Bowden?
Yes, I'm almost finished.
Thank you.
This is to put you on notice that the world has changed.
Thank you. Warren Getz, the next speaker.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board. My name is Warren Getz from New Jersey Association of Rail Passengers, Empire State Passengers Association. I'm really glad to see that the rehab of the Port Jervis line is moving quickly and ahead of plans. It's great. And we have to consider that after service is restored on the Port Jervis line, Metro North has to move ahead with the West of Hudson study. In particular, Metro North has to then start to look into how it can improve service to Woodbury Common. Initially, bus service can help out, but eventually you have to work with the people in the area to develop a station at Woodbury Common. It's very important. Also, now that Metro-North is no longer a partner in the Tappan Zee Bridge project and the possibility of a one-seat train ride from Orange and Rockland County has been put off indefinitely, Metro-North must come up with new plans on how you can provide a one-seat ride from Rockland County and Orange County into New York City. And possibly this is working with New Jersey Transit and Amtrak and the Gateway 2 project. I was at the last New Jersey Transit Board meeting earlier this month, and their quarterly scorecard results of customer satisfaction from New Jersey Transit Rail dropped from 4.5 to 4.2 on a scale of 0 to 10. And the main reason for this drop was all the delays in the Northeast Corridor pertaining to Penn Station, New York, service in and out of Penn Station, New York. Many of the power problems, the signal problems, and the switching problems with Amtrak facilities in and out of Penn Station, New York, have occurred several times each week, and sometimes even 3 within 2 days. Since some of these Amtrak problems also involve Long Island Railroad riders, there is an urgent need for both the Long Island Railroad and New Jersey Transit to get together with Amtrak to help them fund some of the improvements for reliability of service. Although Amtrak is now gladly doing some of the improvements like new tracks and railway placement in the East River tunnels, there's a lot more that has to be done. And I think it's imperative that both the Long Island Railroad and New Jersey Transit get together and see what can be done. Amtrak doesn't have the funding to do all these projects, yet we need it to improve service. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That completes our public speakers. Next is the approval of the minutes on page 4. Are there any changes in the minutes? Motion to approve, second. Any changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Are there any changes to the work plan on page 16? I don't believe so. Okay. Okay, we will start then with the agency presidents and chiefs report. Long Island Railroad goes first this month. Helena.
Good morning. This morning we will be presenting a detailed preliminary report on the September 29th lightning strike at 4:37 p.m. That resulted in 2 separate catastrophic shutdowns of our train service and long delays for our customers throughout the evening. Oops.
Go ahead.
Okay. First, I must express a full and frank apology to our customers. That night was grueling for you and our employees. Our preliminary review indicates what went wrong on that evening and what we can do to fix it. However, we recognize, plain and simply, that doesn't make up for the long night of exasperation, frustration, and discomfort experienced by you, our customers. At the same time that I am expressing our apology to customers, I also want to express a sincere thanks to our customers and our employees and first responders. To our customers, thank you for your cooperation and perseverance during the emergency operation. It was a long night. It was an extended emergency operation. To our employees, as well as police, fire, and EMS units, thank you for your efforts. You kept our customers safe and secure. That is always our number one priority. Not one injury was reported throughout this service disruption. And that goes, I think, to the good work of our train crews and our first responders. It has been an extraordinarily difficult past 12 months for our Long Island Railroad commuters. A series of weather-related events from last September, a year ago, an improbable tornado, the blizzard of December 26th, a relentless cycle of severe winter storms, and, of course, the Amtrak derailment on May 8th, which resulted in a week of schedule changes, Hurricane Irene, and now the lightning strike. They have all repeatedly disrupted the travel plans of our customers. On top of it all, our customers have faced higher fares and fees, while on some branches also receiving less service. While we can't control the weather, I can assure you we are moving quickly to improve our performance when severe weather or unforeseen events cause major service disruptions. Among our priorities is to provide you, our customers, with more timely and useful service information. And in our presentation, you'll see our pledge to our customers. Now, let me take you through the events of September 29th. This is a preliminary review. We, of course, have more investigatory work to do. And we will post this report on the website this afternoon. Okay. In the interest of time, what I'd like to do is summarize for you our preliminary review and then take questions because it is a long report and I want to make sure that we leave enough time for questions. So if everyone would look at their handout as well as we have it on screen, page 2 provides an overview of the events of September 29th. And there is a very detailed chronology in the appendix. At 4:37 p.m., lightning struck the J Signal Hut, which is located west of Jamaica Station. This led to 2 separate catastrophic shutdowns of our train service and long delays for our customers. The lightning strike initially disabled the J signal system, which controls all train movements west of Jamaica. Train service was suspended into Jamaica from both city terminals, Penn and Atlantic Terminal. After trying and failing to restore the signal system through local control, we implemented our Jamaica Emergency Action Plan. The central component of the plan is to advise customers to take the E-train, and then we provide connecting train service from Jamaica East. So we did issue email alerts, we made announcements at Penn, and police assisted us at the queuing area for the E-train. And customers did, in fact, take E-train to Jamaica. We had Long Island Railroad trains positioned and ready to take customers east. Now, we did that by terminating a westbound service into Jamaica. So we terminated that service in Jamaica. Those customers were asked to get off trains, take the E-train into Manhattan. At the same time, there was a customer flow beginning to come to Jamaica via the E-train. By approximately 6:40, 2 efforts were underway. So from 4:37, the initial strike, to about 6:40, we had 2 efforts underway. First, our Jamaica Emergency Action Plan was in place. Customers were boarding trains that were departing from Jamaica East. Our second effort was based on establishing dedicated routes through J. With these routes in place from the old-fashioned blocking and spiking, we were able to advise customers, okay, you no longer need to go to Jamaica via the E-train. We're going to resume service at Penn Station. And we're beginning, to assemble the train equipment at Penn and ready, in fact, customers had boarded trains around 6:40. While it was very slow leaving Penn Station and getting to Jamaica, some trains were almost at Jamaica when at 8:05 the Hall signal system controlling trains east of Jamaica failed. When Hall failed, the emergency action plan was no longer applicable, and we again suspended service from Penn. So 2 things. One is we couldn't send trains any longer east of Jamaica, and 2, we couldn't send trains out of Penn because the dedicated routes were only useful for moving trains through Jamaica on the western portion, but not through Hall on the eastern portion. So customers who received notifications to travel to Jamaica, and again, don't forget that's a 45, 50, 55-minute ride on the E-train, arrived in Jamaica only to find after 8:05 that there was no service. And those who went to Penn after 8:05, because now they had received text alerts telling them that we were resuming service, got back to Penn and found service was suspended again. So as you can imagine, I am receiving numerous reports from customers that said they didn't get updated information, that they didn't get useful information, and some customers felt misinformed because by the time they got their text alert, they were already on the E-train to get to Jamaica. We did provide, and you'll see this in the report, many email alerts and customer information. But that updated information wasn't conveying how rapidly the situation was changing. And we should have made it more clear to customers that there was a second major disruption that we were now facing. Approximately 20 minutes after the hall failure, we had a report of self-evacuation and had to turn off third rail power. In some cases, this prevented us from moving trains to stations, particularly in Jamaica, where we could have maneuvered more trains, one in particular closer to the station. We would have been able to then offload customers. At least they would have had the station to wait in. From nearly the point at which, the lightning struck and service was suspended, right from that moment, our technicians were on the scene to troubleshoot and restore the system. When ultimately, and this was around 10:05, our team identified a programming error, which was the cause of the hall signal system failure. They then corrected it. They found it around 10:05. They corrected it. That took about another 20, 25 minutes. And we could start moving trains again, but that was about 10:30. We had to move trains in Jamaica first. We had to alleviate that congestion, both for Jamaica West, Jamaica East, before we could restart service at Penn Station. Service was restored at Penn Station around midnight. This was, as I said, a very long and grueling night for our customers. There was little consolation for them throughout the night. The only consolation really was when they got up in the morning. Friday morning service was normal. We were able to provide regular AM peak service. This is an overview. You can see at 8:05 there were 17 stranded trains and 9 standing trains. That is an enormous shutdown of service with thousands of people on trains in a very tight area. However, I want to emphasize Hall, where there were approximately 8 trains. It's about a quarter of a mile from the station platform. So now turn to page 3, if you would. Our 3 operational objectives on that evening and in any evening when we have a service disruption is first and foremost redirecting the train movement and ensuring customer safety. Second, communicating with customers. And third, working to restore the system. And in this case, it was the signal system. On pages 4 and 5, let me ask you to go to 4, and then you'll follow to 5 as I'm speaking. The actions we took to meet our operational objectives of protecting customer and employee safety as we prepared to move the trains are listed here on page 4. I've already described the E-Train Emergency Action Plan that we initiated in Jamaica, so I won't go further into that. On pages 6, 7, and 8, we actually identify for you the actions that we took, the issues we faced, and the corrective actions we're now taking with regard to our first operational objective, which of course is redirecting train movement and ensuring customer safety. There were 5 issues we are addressing now through corrective action. Comfort of customers on stranded trains. And again, this means trains not at a station. Our first goal is get trains at a station. Pull them backward, pull them forward, get them to a station as quickly as possible, offer customers the opportunity to get off at a station. But when you're between stations, we classify that as a stranded train. We are meeting with, in fact, Chief Cohen has already met with first responders in the 103 precinct, which covers Jamaica Station. We're looking for their assistance when we need greater personnel. We're also looking at ways in which we can discourage self-evacuation. You will see later in our presentation a pledge to our customers. We need their help. We need to respond to their needs, and we need their help as well. We need them to never leave a train unless they're under the escort of a first responder or a train crew. And one of the things that, our customers on some trains ask for, of course, is water. We'll work with first responders and our own employees on trying to determine whether there can be safe delivery of water to our customers. Crowd management at Jamaica was an issue. We think the 103 precinct will be able to provide us with additional personnel. We want to rely on their resources because oftentimes it's very difficult for us to assemble enough employees to be able to respond. And we will develop better bus information on existing bus routes, as well as something we already have, which is an emergency bus program. We've already handed out a brochure that's been put together by my team describing eastbound alternative subway and bus information. We'll do that for westbound as well. And we will have a separate emergency action plan bus brochure that we can hand out that will tell people where on the streets of Jamaica they can find buses for an emergency bus evacuation from Jamaica. One of the issues we found was that with the number of people in Jamaica and using street-level queuing, because, of course, as you would all recognize, we don't let customers up on the platforms and the portal because it would cause a safety issue in those areas. So we're now queuing many, many people on street level in Jamaica. The noise makes it, the traffic and the number of people make it very difficult for customers to hear announcements. And we need something better than bullhorns. We do have bullhorns. We have lots of bullhorns, but we're going to look at any type of speaker system that we can use externally from the building. When the signal system fails at Jamaica, we really have few alternatives, and our train order process needs to be expedited. We are investigating the use of a secondary signal indication system and ways to expedite train movements during signal outages. When, we have to rely on blocking and spiking to secure the position of the switches, that in and of itself takes an hour to do. And then if you get the signal system back, you're hampered by the fact that you have to take the block and spikes out again. The system does have a secondary indication system. We're going to look very closely at whether that system can be safely used. When service through Jamaica is suspended and access to Penn is restricted, we have an impact on our Port Washington customers. On the evening of September 29th, Port Washington service was operating. We did have to get into cancel combo service after the 8:05 hall signal failure. But customers trying to access that service actually had difficulty getting into Penn Station. They, like everyone else, were faced with restrictions in entering Penn. So we're going to look with law enforcement. Are there ways in which we can address that queuing of Port Washington customers or customers who want to access the Port Washington branch as an alternative? So if you would turn to page 9 now, our second operational objective on September 29th was communicating with customers in a timely manner and with updated information. We were hampered in that effort with the second shutdown in service caused by the hall signal system failure. Customers were confused by reports. Of course, again, as I said, they were coming to Jamaica. They were expecting to get trains because that's what we had said we would be doing. But the hall signal system failure precluded us from offering service from Jamaica East. So customers have reported that they felt confused, that they didn't know what they should be doing, and that they didn't recognize that service was again suspended at Penn Station. We really have to work on the vocabulary we're using to to better alert our customers what's going on. We also have had plans since the December blizzard and the winter to expand our public information office. We think that will help as well. That's scheduled to open in November. It didn't do us any, it wasn't available, for expanded operation on September 29th. But we think that new setup will, in fact, enable us to provide better information, and we'll work with the Commuter Council to start developing a vocabulary that our customers might understand and appreciate, as they read it in a more timely way. On page 11, there is a draft Long Island Railroad pledge to customers that summarizes both our regular customer service goals and our goals during service disruptions. This will be our touchstone for how we review and revise our communication practices and procedures to better meet the needs of our customers. I want to pause for a moment and thank the Long Island Railroad Commuter Council, Senator Schumer's office. Everybody spent a lot of time and attention on this in the last 10 days. To try to develop a pledge that was both meaningful for our customers, for the Commuter Council, and for our own employees. One of the most important elements which we capture is the need for customers to stay in their seat, not to leave a train unless they're under the escort of emergency personnel or our own train crews. And we'll work on this. It's a draft. We're still getting the input. And we will, of course, when we get, a final, publicize it, get it out there as customer information, post it, so that customers will become more familiar with what they can expect during a service disruption. On page 12, we note that the Long Island Railroad is already at work on these materials. And again, we've handed them out. We intend to make busing information both for existing bus routes and for emergency busing from Jamaica more available. Please turn to page 13, which highlights our third operational objective on the evening of September 29th, which was restoring the signal system. As listed on the succeeding pages 14 and 15, you will see that we're focused on 4 issues regarding the signal system. We are working with First Ansaldo, the software manufacturer. While the whole system is an over $50 million system, the software itself is about a $6 million purchase. Ansaldo is the software manufacturer. They've been working with us since September 29th. We also retained Sistra, which is an industry specialist, and we've assembled a peer review group from New York City Transit and Metro North Rail to look at the signal system. The system was designed with robust lightning protection. That's been the first question I've received. Don't we have lightning protection? And the answer is yes, we have very robust lightning protection. We have perimeter protection. But the question remains, why did lightning protection fail to protect the components? All the experts in this area say, lightning protection doesn't, eliminate that lightning will strike. It doesn't preclude lightning from hitting a structure. But there are ways in which you try to protect the components. Again, I want to stress we had robust lightning protection, but nonetheless, components did fail, and we want to know what improvements can be made that will protect the system even further. Second, the system has built-in redundancy, yet the isolation between the A system and the B system did not protect the CPU cards in the B system from failing. Third, the diagnostic software tools led our team to believe that the CPUs were working. So initially, when they responded to the lightning strike, the diagnostic tools, and this is, at the 4:37 hour, indicated that the CPUs were working. That led them to go to the servers. In fact, what we found was the CPUs were the cause of the problem. And we need to identify what improvements can be made in the diagnostic software so that we can diagnose the problem more quickly and, of course, most importantly, accurately. Fourth, we've already taken actions to ensure that we have better quality assurance procedures, which could help us to avoid a programming error. There were very intense circumstances that the troubleshooting team were faced with. They were trying to respond in a way that followed our protocols. A programming error did occur. That is what resulted in the hall signal failure and the second major shutdown of the system. We are intensifying our training curriculum, protocols, and manuals, and looking for industry expertise to help us identify what might be better procedures during those very intense times of troubleshooting. This is our preliminary report. I do want to go for a moment to the chronology, which is in the appendix. If you'll, you can see that we have summarized hour by hour where the trains were. And then finally, the last slide is a picture of what Jamaica looked like with the 805 signal failure. You can see the number of trains and where they were positioned. They were not as easily and readily accessible to the station, despite the fact that I keep saying it's Jamaica. I want to reinforce, many trains were, as much as a quarter of a mile from the station. If you add the length of the train, that's a half mile from the station. I know that this is a very dense report. I would like to take questions now. I also want to assure you that we are available to answer questions if you have anything after this meeting. Let me open it up to questions.
Thank you, Helena. Questions from the board members? Vinny?
Mitch, not a question. Before we get to questions, I would just like to comment, if I could. Something that I should probably do more often from this seat is praise our employees for what a great job they did during a very, very difficult time. We don't get to plan this stuff. Mother Nature has been beating us up for the past year, no doubt, and this was no different. Our employees step up during difficult times. Technology is a beautiful thing. Sometimes it lets us down, and the only thing left when that happens are the employees. The key thing to remember here, and again, I'm a conductor by trade. I've been involved in numerous service disruptions throughout my career. I know what it's like to be on board a train with 1,000 people that are unhappy and want to go home. And it creates a tremendous amount of stress on the employees on that train and on the managers trying to manage it and the signal maintainers trying to fix it. There's a lot of pressure involved, and I think the public and this board needs to recognize that we don't always have control over what we're dealt, and how you deal with it is important. The key thing to know in a lot of these situations on board these trains, that there were 2 crew members on several of those trains with over 1,000 people. That's 2 people that are responsible to keep everybody informed, everybody safe, tend to any medical needs they may have, and as sad as it is to say, to keep them on the train. Self-evacuation is a tremendous concern. Once somebody lands on the ground, it's over. I mean, we have the responsibility of shutting down. That's nobody's fault but the frustration of the rider, which I understand. I think we have to remember, as a board, as an agency, that we have to make sure that we have those backups. And train crews are a vital, important part of the equation. I couldn't be prouder of the guys that I worked side by side with. I think we all should be proud of every effort that's made by every employee in our system when stuff like this happens, because they're the ones out there getting screamed at. They're the ones out there in the cold, in the snow, wherever it may be, trying to fix things. We work closely with the MTA PD during these self-evacuations. We welcome them when they get there, because that uniform, in addition to our uniform, aids people in being responsible and staying on board our trains. But that's an important part of the puzzle, is to make sure people stay on board the trains, and that we recognize the importance of personnel in the field. Personnel in the field. If we're going to rely on them when things go wrong, and that's why they're there. I've trained a lot of employees in our system, and one of the key things that I've taught is you're paid to know what to do when things go wrong. When everything's great, when everybody's abiding by the law, when everybody is doing what they're supposed to do, we don't have major issues. But you got to step up when the time comes, and our employees do over and over and over again.
Thank you, Vinnie. Very well said. Questions from board members on Helena's presentation? Jim?
Thank you. I certainly would second Benny's comments. I think that they're well stated and important to keep in mind. Helena, I got a couple things. One is the programming piece that caused the hall problem. Was this programming error an indication that there was a lack of lockouts in the system that would permit the programming error that you're referring to, or bad authorization? It seems like
Let
it
me
was
just
such
say-
a catastrophic problem that occurred from the push of one button.
Well, and you'll see it in the detailed chronology. What the troubleshooting team did was, when they couldn't get the J system to respond, they used a server from the hall location. And when they were using that server from the hall location and programming J information in it, there was a programming error. I will say, while this was an extremely difficult issue, the system responded correctly and shut itself down. It failed safe, so that the programming error was recognized in the J software system, and that's why it shut down hall. There were something that was being, transmitted from the hall logic to J, and J recognized it was not, the correct internet protocol. So it, was a very difficult issue. I don't think it is, it wasn't a push of a button.
Well, I don't mean
Yeah.
to get into the weeds here. I just think that, when you put a system of that size at risk, through a programming issue, I mean, you've got to take some extraordinary actions to try and protect it, because it's just too damn important. And I don't need to say that to you, I know. Secondly, on page 7, you mentioned, as far as the limited flexibility to provide train service when the signal system fails, especially at Jamaica and other key stations. The second point there, review authorization process to expedite train movement during signal outages. Is that, and when you went through this, you didn't comment on that. Is there a way that you can do some overrides here that would allow, is that what this is talking about?
Well, there are two things that we're addressing here. In the first bullet, the system does provide a secondary indication system. And we're going to see if that system can be used, and we have to use both Ensaldo, Sistra, and our own team, to set up the protocols for using a secondary indication system. The second item is that we, have a process of train orders when we're in a block and spike situation, and we are looking to see what we can do from a train orders perspective to expedite that process. And that's one that Ray had actually already begun. We're going to try to expedite that. Ray, I'm going to let you address, the train order process.
Okay, because when we have the signal system operating, it will protect us in terms of the train going on the right route and not going against switches or other trains. When we lose the signal system, it's necessary to authorize those movements verbally after taking the manual precautions. In going through Jamaica, the trains will encounter an average of like 6 signals. So that process has to be repeated 6 times. And today we have a form that is used and filled out as part of that process to document it. with the technology we have today with radios and things like that, we can eliminate the piece of paper.
There you go.
And that's what we're working on, make it a verbal process. Still as safe, but slightly less redundancy, so somewhat quicker.
And we would then take it as an entire route instead
Right.
of signal by signal. And that was a process that we had ongoing. We need to expedite that. It requires a lot of, changes in our own paperwork and approvals with the FRA.
Thank you. One last thing. I appreciate your interaction with the Long Island Commuter Council. You've said that numerous times during your presentation, and we on the PCAC certainly appreciate that. Just one comment on the pledge is that I think it would be very helpful if the pledge, as finally adopted, were reproduced in large plaques in large type and posted where riders can see them, which would be in the stations and on the platforms, so that it is as much as anything just to empower riders and to create really a good feeling between the railroad and riders. I think it's a very positive move on your part, and we certainly support it.
Commissioner, I'd like to thank you for that comment. We agree. We're going to put this in a poster size. We'll put it on board trains, and we'll put it in our stations. We'll post it on our web, and try to do seat drops as well so that we cover customers. Mark Epstein was here. I don't know if he's still here. There he is. Mark put a lot of effort into this and worked hard with the entire council. And I know I can count on the Commuter Council to continue to get the word out to customers because the pledge is very good. It identifies what we're going to do. It also identifies, customer expectation.
Mark is the chair of the Long Island Commuter
Committee.
Council.
Charles?
Yeah. I'm still a bit confused. Hall went out because of overload, or did Hall go out because of human error? Why did it go out?
I think you will see it in the chronology. It was clearly human error. It went out because the troubleshooting team was trying to restore J, and when they were working on the problems at J, they did something that shut down the Hall signal system. They didn't know that initially. They had to recreate their steps. That was from 8:05 to about 10 o'clock. They identified what they did, and then they had to undo it. That took about another 20 minutes. So around 10:25, we finally got Hall back.
Ira?
Yeah, okay, I mean, that makes it clearer, especially the comment on page 15. It says absence of sufficient troubleshooting information in the manuals and training curriculum, which I think shows that's why that happened.
It may be or may not be, but we're
Well,
going
okay,
to belt and suspender it with lots of procedures.
Well, that's what when
Yeah.
this thing was first put in, that was the impression everybody had, that we did have a backup system, and it's not, and Jim had mentioned this too, the idea of a backup system that can be used. I thought that was already in place.
Well, as you'll note on page 15, there is an A and a B system.
Right.
And we are working with Ansaldo, Sistra, and our peer review team to determine why did the CPU cards in the B system fail.
Okay, but
We don't have those answers yet today. This is, we're at a preliminary stage, but we clearly agree with you that is one of our questions.
So that's what was discussed. And was on page 7, it's mentioned the feasibility of utilizing a secondary indication system. In other words, that's still
a different
That's like
issue.
in a way that's
No.
the third. That's separate from the CPUs, where the CPUs have a backup system of their own.
Could we do that offline?
Okay, yeah, we'll do offline. Just a little bit.
That
It
is
seems to be almost
the
like this.
secondary indication system is not the A or B system. In fact,
It's an additional.
It's something that would be different. Bob, do you want to address that?
Sure. The secondary indication system is really what that will provide us is just a switch status. When we have a major shutdown like that, and you lose control, we lose indication, and we lose the ability to move switches. We have to positively identify where the switch location before we can start moving trains again. The secondary indication is it provides a switch indication off the vital relays. So it's the ability to do manual routes, but much quickly. We won't have to block and spike.
Okay.
But
Leslie,
that's not the A and the B system.
right. No, I understand.
Right.
That's the
Right.
secondary system even from the new system, which has a backup of its own. The CPUs. I want to compliment you on this. This is actually something the PCAC had asked for many years ago, a pamphlet that tells people what the alternatives are. There's some suggestions I have. I'll tell them later. The PCAC probably has even more. We have someone on on the Commuters Council that actually rides the bus system on Long Island a great deal. So they might have some ideas for this. Thank you.
Good.
I think this is going to be a good improvement.
And we'll be doing it for westbound, and we'll be doing it for the emergency action plan in Jamaica.
Okay.
Charles, you had something else?
Yeah. Human error is human error. That's why we have erasers on pencils. Some say are outmoded as well. My question is, have you looked into the possibility of having some form of technological, computerized equipment that would serve as an automatic cut-in when the circuit breaker, so to speak, goes out?
This system is designed to have a B system so that if the primary system goes out, the secondary system is supposed to work. You know, we would have to have a separate discussion with you, Commissioner. It's not just a breaker issue. You know, this is, you know, enormously complex.
I'd like to understand that better.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyone else? I just wanted to make a couple of things. Obviously, the adequacy or inadequacy of the system we bought is an integral part of this review and investigation by the railroad and by others. And I would assume at some point we will come back to the committee with a report on whether the system that was bought by this board worked the way it was supposed to work or did not. If it did not, why not? And what the ramifications will be to the companies that sold us systems that may not have worked in the way they were supposed to. I don't want to presume they did or did not at the moment, but that is obviously an integral part of this. Secondly, the issue of communication to the customers is obviously of great concern. Customers were given a variety of information. One of the problems we have, obviously, is that for those of us who go through Penn Station in Jamaica are lousy on good days. They're crowded, they're inadequate, the communication systems there are not as they should be when everything is running right. When everything is running wrong and people are out on 34th Street or on the streets of Jamaica not knowing what to do, it's even worse. And I think the railroad, while obviously the streets are not the railroad's responsibilities, I think it's incumbent upon the railroad to work with New York City Police, the New York City Transit and the bus system and MTA Police to determine how best to communicate with customers who believe they're going to get into a train station, which they're not going to get into, and are left on the streets. That even makes it more difficult at Jamaica because not all the buses that we want people to take going eastbound are at the Jamaica's railroad station. They're in other parts of Jamaica, 3, 4, 5 blocks away, and the ability of people to get there, the ability of people to know where to go, because I'm sure, and Ira and I have had this conversation, most of the people who take the Long Island Railroad probably don't know the streets of Jamaica because they don't go on the streets of Jamaica. That's not good or bad, it's just fact that they use Jamaica as a through point, not a destination. And where to go, where the buses are, where the buses are going, that's going to be an integral part of communication and is an essential component of getting people where they want to go in that capacity. So, and then obviously the issue of communication on the trains, the ability of MTA police to get personnel to the trains or other first responders to help the conductors, because I agree with Vinny, the uniform has an impact. And, people who might think otherwise of doing something because the conductor tells them not to do it and that's no disrespect to the conductor, Vinny, may not do it if the uniformed police officer is telling them, don't do that. And so the ability to get MTA police to the stranded trains is of great importance in these situations in this regard.
And in addition, precinct police as
Precinct
well.
police as well, right. Right.
Yeah.
Police officers, people
Right.
in uniform who have that credibility in that regard. That's not to say that the rest of us don't have credibility, but in those emergency situations, they have a lot more than we do in that regard. So, I want to thank the railroad for putting together this preliminary review for the board. Obviously, there will be other activities that will go on. We look forward to your continuing report in the months ahead because this is, while it is an isolated incident, it showcases things that I think we all agree we can do better on as we go forward because, as we all know, Mother Nature, for whatever reason, is getting worse and not better. And so the ability to have other incidents like this caused by the weather is going to happen no matter what kind of planning we do, and we just have to be prepared for it. Charles, did you have something else to
Just
add?
one final question. Has the Inspector General's office been asked to take a
Yes.
good look at Saldo?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, Helena, next.
Okay, this seems like cruel and unusual punishment.
Yes, I know that.
But I now have to turn to, let's see, wait, we have one item. Our November, wait a minute. No, if we're following the agenda, I'm not next.
No, we're not going to do the, okay, then
Metro
we'll
North
go to
is
Metro
next,
North.
right,
Howard?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay, good morning. There's just a few items I would like to highlight for everybody this morning. Let me start on the Port Jervis line. We started, you may recall, that last month I had laid out a plan to the board. We've been updating you, and today we have extremely good news on that front, that the project has gone exceedingly well, and that due to the efforts, and I'll talk about them in a minute, we will be able to restore full rail service on Monday, November 28th. That's about 5 weeks before the end of the year. Secondly, that the cost of the project we are now estimating to be between $30 and $40 million. That's our original estimate was $60 million, so that will come in significantly below as well. The reasons for that, there are a couple of them. One has been excellent work by our maintenance of way forces. We sent over to west of Hudson from almost, in early September, some of our best people who have been working consistently to take back the right-of-way, to bring back the ballast. They did a great job. Secondly, we've been able to expedite a number of contract awards. You recall Jay gave me that authority. We've used it. There are some more contracts we'll be bringing to you today that I had awarded for ratification. And we've also had very good work by a host of contractors, been very helpful. And finally, we've had significant cooperation both from Orange County and the localities, in particular the village of Sloatsburg. So what we will now be doing is between now and November 28th, we'll continue our busing operation, and then on November 28th, we go back to the rail operation. I also want to point out that we have gotten terrific cooperation from MTA Bus. They have done an absolutely terrific job supporting this literally since the Tuesday after the hurricane up and through today and up through the end of the month. The other couple of other points on Port Jervis, we will complete all our work on the line by June of next year. We had originally thought it would be the end of next year. We are continuing to work with the MTA staff to recover monies from insurance and from FEMA. That's an active process. And finally, I want to thank all our employees at Metro North. This has been an effort across every department in the company, has had a role in this. We set this as our priority. We said it would be our priority in different correspondence with you, and we were able to deliver this in advance, ahead of budget and under schedule. So that's the first thing. Second thing I want to also mention is that last month Metro North received 2 Brunel Awards. This is an international design competition held every 3 years. We won one award for Best Industrial Design for Croton Harmon Shop. And then we won their top award called the Jury Award for the Best Design and Engineering of any railroad in the world. And I do want to just quote to you what they said, because the competition was very fierce. We had over 150 other entries in here from 43 different countries. Some phenomenal projects were put forward. But they gave us the award for us, and this is the quote from the jury. It said, Metro-North carries the most passengers every year on the American continent. It has undergone both extraordinary changes of the company culture as well as a shift to incorporation of design as a strategic business tool. So it really encompasses what Metro-North has done over the past 30 years, and it was great to see it recognized. I'll tell you, we were the first U.S. railroad ever to win this award. It's always been won either by the Japanese or by different European railroads. Later this year, we will be doing a exhibition with the Transit Museum that's going to talk about the Brunel Award as well as how Metro-North, our achievements over the past 30 years. Third item is just to mention to you with regard to our quiet car experiment. So we started our pilot last Monday on 31 trains coming out of Poughkeepsie and Wassaic in the morning and evening rush hours. So far, the results have been positive. There have been, of course, a couple of hiccups along the way, but people overall are very pleased. We will be monitoring it and evaluating the program, and we'll be back to you later to make a determination if it should be expanded or not. Those are the three items I have mentioned.
Questions for Howard? Susan?
Kudos, kudos, kudos. First for the Port Jervis line. When I saw the Port Jervis line, I thought it was catastrophic and like nothing I had seen before. I met Jay Walder at the line, and when I saw his face, I knew I had underestimated what the situation was. He tried to explain to me, as calmly as he could, that it was going to be a long time, Susan. This will be a long, long time before this rail is back. Metro-North pulled together a team, staff and management, who thought outside the box, were so creative in how to recover materials and what to do next, and how to schedule it, and how to rebuild that railroad, that we would never be able to tell you that it's coming back as soon as it is without all those people participating. It was unbelievable. And thanks to the sister agencies who came together to provide support when we really needed it. And then for the Brunel Award, I was lucky enough to be able to go to Washington and see the presentation. I thought it was pretty great when I saw it, but when I saw the competition, I was blown away. Really good work. Unbelievable. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I think that Susan's comments are echoed by all the members of the board. Congratulations, and especially on Port Jervis, after looking at the pictures. The only thing I can say about Port Jervis, I think you're happy it's not in Connecticut. In your relationship with the state of Connecticut in this regard. Next.
Thank you.
Anything else, Howard?
No.
Okay, next, MTA Capital Construction, page 134 of the agenda. Howard, Michael.
Okay. Just to if I remind everyone, the last meeting we reported that we are rebaselining due to a series of events, and we expect to be back to you by the end of the year with a new rebaseline. But in between that, I would like to point out that the work continues actually, and some of it slightly ahead of schedule. This is a schematic showing you the tunnels. There are 4 tunnels that are being right now dug in soft ground in Queens in the Sunnyside yards under the various trestles. The longest one is actually the yard lead. Starts here in the middle, and then what you see actually in green is the progress since our last meeting. The yard lead is actually cleared by now, all of the rails. So now we are outside that, so that's good news because we are not digging under rails. and that's expected to be completed by the end of the year. And the other one is Tunnel A, Track A, that again is moving very well at this point. Just a couple of pictures. The difference here that we have on this side is that all our tunnels were actually finished in precast. So as we advance, in effect, the tunnels are done. So that's a great thing about it. At this point, the yard lead goes about 50 feet a day, so that's actually is doing very well. This is the entry portal for the A tunnel, and and what we're doing here, actually, in preparation of the yard lead arriving towards the yards, we are preparing, in effect, the approach structure that is going to be an open structure. It's a U structure in which the tunnel boring machine will come into, and we will finish that. In addition to that, there is some additional freezing. This is the freezing plant that was used for the service area, and we are right now. This is where the GM plant used to be, and this is referred to as a GM bridge, and we're underpinning it. At this point, we're putting piles down. What you're seeing here is actually the preparation on the Queens side to go actually on the east side of Northern Boulevard. It shows you the various levels. We are right now at the bottom level in preparing to go under Northern Boulevard. The freezing plant, the freezing will be done by the end of the year, and at that point we're going to start digging. So this is a little different than all our freezing that we have done, because here we're going actually horizontally rather than vertically, so we have to create almost a crown, a frozen crown. Not only we're going under the IND and the foundation of the end line, but also there is a water stream and some other assorted soil conditions that are not that great. This is the type of work that is being done to install. This is a bridge, and what we're doing is we're actually bringing in the steel trusses and putting it in place, and then we're pouring the concrete. So by doing that, we are able to actually move the work rather fast. In Manhattan, and actually this picture may not even be that accurate at this point, this is the cavern work in the Western Cavern. Some of you have visited the upper level, and actually I believe that shortly we're going to be pouring the last 50 feet, and that's going to be done, and we're going to start the eastbound cavern. I have some pictures for that. This is the progress in the westbound cavern, and this is a movable form, in effect, that we are moving along. This is eastbound, and we are in fact shotcreting, installing waterproofing, then we're putting reinforcement and pouring concrete. So that's a pretty mechanized type of work, and is moving well at this point. Some of you that have seen, these are the wellways. This is where the high-speed escalators are going to go down. This is wellway number 4, in which the rebars are in place. We are starting concreting, I think, tomorrow. This is wellway 3, where we finished already the waterproofing and started installation of the rebar. So they're in various stages, and we expect that to move well. This is just gives you a panoramic. Well, can you move it a little slower? Yes, can you? No? Okay. Sorry.
It's a train speed.
It's a very. Anyway, actually it gives you a panoramic view as to how this work is progressing. Keep going. This is actually the installation of the escalator at the 245 Park Avenue. That will provide an additional entry point. Next. And with that, I would like to conclude. I would say that actually the work right now is moving rather well, and we had actually started the concrete operation at 44th Street, just behind us. At 50th Street vent plant, the contractor started to do the drill and blast, and at the 55th Street, we are going to start. We're going to award the contract shortly. That doesn't make for happy customers sometimes around there, but that's part of the work.
The way it is. Anything else, Michael?
That's
Any
it.
questions for capital construction? Okay, page 129, MTA Police Report. Chief.
Good morning. For the month of September, we were up by 2 incidents, 29 versus 27. Long Island Railroad had 12 incidents versus 10 plus 2. We had 4 robberies versus 2 robberies last year, the same time period. Out of those 4, we did make arrests in 3 incidents. We had 2 incidents by the same individual at Mineola. An arrest was made by an off-duty MTA police sergeant en route to work based on a photo that we had distributed. We had one in Freeport with an arrest, and we had an incident in Wyandanch, which is still open. On Metro North, there were 17 incidents versus 13, an increase of 4. We had 3 robberies versus 2 last year. We had 1 in Glenwood, 1 in Grand Central Terminal in the bathroom, and 1 on 125th Street, in which there was an arrest. And then that arrest was made based on, again, the video surveillance. We downloaded a picture, we distributed it, and fortunately for us, but unfortunately, the individual returned 2 days later. We believed to victimize somebody else, and he was arrested. He had 22 priors, and he had just got out after doing 4 years. We did have 5 assaults, 4 of those on officers closed by arrest, and 1 on a individual on a platform also closed by an arrest. If there's any questions.
Charles?
The materials that you have provided us, or that we have been provided, do not contain any arrest information. Would it be possible in the future to include that? And the reason I focus on it is because crime seems to have increased in both Metro North and the Long Island Railroad. It seems to me that you get only part of the picture, the sad part of the picture, when you don't see that the action has been taken to help.
We can put whatever we choose to put in the book. And what happens is sometimes we will have the accurate crime statistic, and with the detective follow-up, an arrest can take place the next month, and sometimes it'll be skewed. We can have an increase in arrest, but it may not be for the crimes for that particular month, but we can provide whatever you would like.
No, we will talk to the chief about how to do that in that context, because obviously I agree with Charles. The report from the chief explaining what happens afterward is very informative, and in fact, probably sometimes even more informative than the report itself in that regard. But we'll talk about that when we get to that. Yes.
I have one question about the crime report. I noticed that the Metro North has a higher crimes per day rate than Long Island Railroad. How are crimes at Penn Station counted? Is it just in the Long Island Railroad area?
Yeah, the Long Island Railroad area and properties that we police and own.
Okay, and I guess Grand Central Metro, anything in Grand Central.
Everything. Yes.
Is that
includes?
We attribute this difference. Could we attribute it to that, or I'm just wondering why Metro North has a higher rate than Long Island Railroad. And in some ways, a much higher rate, because Long Island Railroad has seen an increase in crime, when Metro North has not seen such a dramatic increase.
Well, the larcenies are pretty much spread out throughout both systems. When you break them down, I did a breakdown a while ago, and very few instances where there were more than 2 in one place, other than maybe Grand Central and places like Penn Station. Okay. But to explain exactly why the one number is higher.
It's a higher rate. Well, it'd be interesting to see we could take that later, just to see the rate of crimes at Grand Central compared to Penn Station.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else on the police report? Okay. Now we're on to information and action items. Long Island Railroad is starting. Helena.
Okay, we have one information item on page 60 of your book. It's the November track program. We are adjusting our timetable to support construction projects. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'm going to continue.
Keep going.
Okay, now we're up to the customer satisfaction survey. Materials were distributed, and we do have a PowerPoint. I'm going to start, and then Metro North is going to do theirs as well. Okay, let's get that up if we could. This is actually, in the next slide, very good. I want to put this in an overall context. I actually had the opportunity in 2009, when I was here at the MTA, to suggest to my fellow agencies that we had to have one customer satisfaction survey instrument, and that we had to all rely on the way that that was set up. We were able to go forward with that, and Metro North, New York City Transit, use now and Long Island Railroad all use the same overall rating and survey instrument. So this was the first year that all the agencies were on this unique survey instrument. Of course, the surveys were conducted after a year that included fare increases, service cuts, severe winter weather. While there was an effort to communicate with customers, and many of you probably saw the MTA's campaign to identify what improvements we were making for customers, we clearly felt the customer impact, the customer ratings reflect the impact of those service reductions, fare increases, and the weather. With regard to the Long Island Railroad context, let's go to the next slide. One thing that I think does skew some of the results for the Long Island Railroad is that the survey itself was conducted in a period immediately after the derailment on Mother's Day by the Amtrak train, and that resulted in a week of disrupted service for Long Island Railroad customers. So I would say it was not an ideal time to survey our customers regarding our service. And the ratings probably do, in fact, reflect all the press that went into the East River Tunnel repairs and the Amtrak derailment. If you go to the next slide, you will see a substantial decrease in customer satisfaction with Long Island Railroad. We went from 89% in 2010 to 78%, an 11-point reduction in 2011. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that the overall customer satisfaction was down on peak service, reverse peak, weekday off-peak, weekend off-peak. Every indication was down, reverse peak probably being the least amount. With regard to the next slide on employees, customer satisfaction with employee performance actually remained, given the kind of year we had, relatively stable from 91 to 90, 93 to 92 with train conductors. Ticket sellers did get the wrath a little bit of the fact that we closed windows and we reduced the hours that ticket windows are open. If you turn to the next slide, here's where you see the overall rating on train service. Value for money using the railroad received the largest decline. What was their value for money? So again, this is after 3 successive fare increases and service reductions. On the next slide, you'll see a challenge that we face with regard to train interior cleanliness of restrooms, physical conditions of restrooms. They have been a challenge. They continue to be a challenge for us with regard to the onboard conditions. And one of the issues for us is the length of time a train is in service. It can start out having a clean restroom, but as the trip progresses, the restroom degenerates. If you turn to the next slide, you'll see customer information. Unplanned service disruptions, of course, takes a tremendous reduction in terms of our customer response and their satisfaction with the information they get. There is an appendix, and it identifies the methodology for the survey. It gives you a sample of the questionnaire that was used. But if you go to the very last slide in the appendix, it really does tell the story of overall Long Island Railroad score by branch. And if you could bring that one up. go right to the last one in the interest of time. Keep going by branch. Keep going. Okay, right there. If you look, for example, at West Hempstead, 22% reduction in the overall score. West Hempstead no longer has weekend service after over 80 years of having weekend service. Long Beach had a major train taken out of its peak schedule. So you can see those ratings reflect that. Port Washington lost its midday service that was on the half hour and is now at hourly service. So you see an 11-point reduction there. Far Rockaway lost train service as well. I would say, my sense is that the overall loss of train service probably contributes to the biggest reduction in the rating. And we do need to look carefully at Port Washington, where my sense is vehicle miles traveled, people accessing cars, has probably gone up because they've lost the convenience of the half-hour off-peak service. We need to look at Long Beach as well, because we get some issues without that train that was in the schedule. And of course, that was the train that provided some weekday West Hempstead service as well, which has been a constant source of written communication from customers about that train. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them. We also have Metro North's presentation, but
Charles,
I can take
why
questions.
don't we take one by one? Go ahead. Do Long Island first.
I think the customer satisfaction survey ties in quite clearly with the performance statistics you've given. So, for example, in respect of Huntington and a few other portions as referred to on pages 19 and 20 of the book, you've got an awful lot of standees on the trains that come out of there. The reasons apparently are that the trains cannot be longer because you cannot get the adequate cooperation of public officials out there. But query, can you not add another train? Same thing with some of these other service problems. Delays, they tie in directly, these numbers tie in directly with the performance statistic. So I have really one question for you. I now know that the customers don't like what they're getting. I now know that they have a right not to like what they're getting. And now all I'd like to know is, what are we going to do to fix it?
Well, my sense is that bringing back the train service that had to be eliminated during our fiscal crisis in 2010 would go a long way to raising customer satisfaction. And that's going to be an enormous challenge for this board as we go forward with the MTA's financial condition. I think we go back to those service reductions. We knew at that time that customers were going to react. And I think we see their reaction very clearly here.
It seems, forgive me.
I must say that I find it distasteful that you would ask such an open-ended question like that. It doesn't, you said that it's obvious that the customers are dissatisfied. Well, not every customer is dissatisfied. And I just find that to be a very, forgetting the fact that there's a time schedule here and everybody's lives are at stake today in terms of their own meetings that they have to attend. But it just seems really open-ended. If you had a question specifically about the restrooms, for example, that deteriorated in terms of customer satisfaction. But just to say an open-ended question that customers are unhappy, what are we going to do about it? It's like, I don't know, I just think it's a little bit of a cheap shot.
Go ahead,
There's nothing open-ended, if I may, with the fact that there are 80 people standing on the trains coming out of Huntington, or that the PM peak from Huntington is down to 73.1%. These statistics, which have been explained consistently by Ms. Williams, and which have been focused on honestly, forthrightly, and ably by her and her staff, make one essential point. We are in the business of providing customer service. She has tried to do that. She has tried valiantly to do that, and we are remiss in failing to support that adequately, in my view.
Well, I don't think there's any question that the ability to add additional service would alleviate some of the concerns. We've had that conversation before, and I think that is part of the budget discussions that are going on now and will be approved by this board in the next couple of months. This board has the opportunity, if it wants, not just this committee, but the entire board, because those of us who sit on the other committees get the same issue with New York City Transit and the same issue with other aspects of it. The reduction in service has had a major impact on the region. Of that, there is no doubt. It's incumbent upon this board and our funding partners to try and alleviate that to the extent we can, and I think that's a very fair and opportunity in the next 2 months to see what we can do in the budget to be adopted for 2012. Are there ways in which this board collectively can add some of the service back? Because I think Helena and I think Howard would say the same, and I know Tom Prendergast would say the same. You know, the reduction in service has had a dramatic impact, and can we rectify that? That's going to be the issue.
Good.
Well, we'll see. Any other questions? Ira?
Just a brief comment about service reliability. Back at the time, I think, when was this survey performed?
The survey was performed the last 2 weeks in May. And
this
the
year.
first 2 weeks
Right.
in June.
Okay.
Yes.
See, that was a bad period.
That was a very bad period for the Long Island.
No, but I want to note that we've had, for whatever reason, a bad couple of years now at the railroad where I don't think we've met the goal on-time performance on many branches, and I think that's reflected here. And getting on-time performance better should be a goal that we're going to have to really. I think we all have to focus on more because there's been many delays for numerous reasons, and not least of which is one we discussed right at the beginning of this meeting. So I think reliability of service is key. I think looking at the capital program and saying what's causing delays would be a good approach as well. I do want to comment again. This year, we're actually, as far as these statistics go on time performance, we're actually doing a little bit better. There are less things causing major delays this year than last year. So I don't know whether that'll be reflected in the customer satisfaction survey, but I think a lot of this is, again, it's not just the major delays either. Often there's delays every day. I know our community council complains about them. One thing is signal problems, but...
Well, my sense is the major delays are what very, very much upset our customers. We saw that on September 29th. We saw that the week of the Amtrak derailment and the repairs that they had to take in the East River Tunnel. And that one followed the Passover broken rail in the tunnel, which followed the New Jersey Transit disruption at Penn Station. There's no question that the Penn Station infrastructure, the East River tunnels, is under enormous pressure. We are working with Amtrak. We've been reporting to you on that so that we do get better reliability. I agree with you, Commissioner. Our customers want to get from point A to point B without any disruption. That's their goal every morning, every evening, and in the off-peak as well. They really don't want to hear whether it's the weather, Amtrak, or New Jersey Transit.
Of that, there can be no doubt.
Right.
Metro North, Howard.
Okay, thank you, Mitch.
Hold on.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
All right, first of all, I have
I'm
to go
sorry.
on that side because
I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
No,
Go ahead.
it's not your fault. I don't blame you. I'm just trying to see what conclusions I can draw to the numbers, and I've read the methodology, but not being a statistical expert or a marketing expert, I'm just wondering whether that is the standard methodology for other similar transport.
Perhaps address that offline. I also am not a statistical methodology person, but we do have people, Howard and I both have people that could go through the statistical
It
part of
is the same statistical analysis and methodology used within the MTA family. I think that is fair. All the MTA family members now use the same customer service methodology.
I'm fine with offline, but notwithstanding what you say, and I hear you, and I want to hear if it's the same year from last year and the year before, I don't know what context in which to put it without knowing if it's standard, not only in the industry, how that compares with private corporations that do similar type of studies.
If I may, John, let me answer a little bit, familiar with it. I think that you'll find the answer is going to be yes. This is fairly standard across industry. We have modified over the years exactly how we do it. As Helena mentioned, a couple of years ago, we made it consistent across all the agencies in the family. But I think outside, we can explain with, so we have MTA staff here as well as our staff, exactly how it was done, and get into more detail.
Yeah, I would appreciate that, because without that, they're numbers without a true meaning to me.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
not a problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Howard?
Okay, so we go up to Metro North. Okay, so let me start while this is coming up. That obviously we had the similar, the timing for Metro North, the survey was done at the same time. The issues Helena talked about were also our issues. Let's go to the first slide, please. So, in an overall basis, the customer satisfaction on Metro North was remained very strong. It was particularly strong on the Harlem-Hudson line. The New Haven line is a little bit of a different story. I'll talk about that. There was clearly a decline from 11 to 10. On the Hudson and Harlem line, people are still very satisfied. The numbers are in round numbers, and 95% of the people are happy. The New Haven line, however, is a different story. There we have about 81% of the people who are satisfied. The New Haven line survey results clearly were affected by what happened over the winter. You may recall we had severe equipment shortages. We put in a special schedule that reduced service. And that clearly showed up in the survey results. As I've said to the committee many times, and I will continue to say, we face severe challenges on the New Haven line, both with equipment and infrastructure, and it will take many years for the New Haven line to get up to where the Harlem and Hudson is. We are making significant progress with the state of Connecticut on the M8s. That will go a long way, but we still have major infrastructure challenges in the state of Connecticut that have to be addressed before the line can be brought up to Harlem and Hudson. Next one. This shows just overall service. You can see the decline. I point out that we had, I think it's 33% where people were very satisfied, so we're pleased with that number. You can see things have all gone down a little bit, and again, throughout these results, what's happening here is the lower scores on the New Haven line are driving everything down across the system. Next slide. Okay, this shows exactly what I was talking about by line. You can see the difference between the Harlem-Hudson and New Haven lines. You can also see the decline on the New Haven line. One of the things I will point out is you can see on the far right there that the on-time performance on the New Haven line, the results there have gone down. Even though the performance is still over 95%, the expectations are high, and I think part of the scheduling issues have affected that when we had to put in that special schedule. Next slide. This shows by line, again, the ratings. Again, you see the exact same thing, the New Haven line being lower. Harlem and Hudson is pretty much constant. With regard to from last year and very high, with regard to the value for money, you see everything has gone down. We think that's because of the fare increase. And again, you see New Haven line being the lowest. Next one, Jeff. This is now showing by time period. You see the peak period, AM peak, has gone down. The reverse has gone down. That's largely all within the New Haven line. The Harlem and Hudson did very well. Off-peak and weekends are both quite high and did well, particularly the weekends across all three lines. And in part, that's because they're on the New Haven line. While they still have old equipment, we didn't have the reduced schedules and some of the other things to the same extent we did for the peak period. Next one, Jeff. Here are some categories where we actually went up, which are very positive. Both the stations which we focus on and trying to keep clean. Our employee ratings continue to be extremely high. As Vinny pointed out earlier, this is the frontline crews who are out there day in and day out doing a terrific job, and it's recognized in the survey. The train schedules went down a little bit, and GCT continues to be rated exceedingly high. With regard to information, customer information, something we constantly are working to improve. Overall, we've done reasonably well. The area we clearly, and it was never measured before, but we clearly have to focus on is unplanned service changes. In service delays, there we were rated the lowest. Obviously, people are not happy if they're delayed, but we know as well that there are a lot of things we need to be doing better to keep people informed as to what's happening. On onboard conditions, you'll see that we did on the place we've not done that well is the restrooms. Again, this is largely driven by the New Haven line. That is where the biggest difference are. I will give you one example here. So with regard to the cleanliness of train interior, which was at 75%, 87% on the Hudson line, 90% on the Harlem line is satisfied, 60% on the New Haven line is satisfied. So those are the kinds of differences you see that are driving these numbers. Then we move to west of Hudson. Over here on the west of Hudson, Port Jervis, Pascack Valley, ratings were fairly constant. Again, I would point out the obvious that this was before we had Hurricane Irene and all the impacts on the Port Jervis line. Next one, Jeff. You can see here's overall train service. We've gone up in a few categories. Pascack Valley went up significantly. On-time performance, particularly Pascack Valley, has gone up. That's been a terrifically performing line throughout the year by New Jersey Transit. This is our overall other categories. You can see we've gone up in a number of places. The thing to point out is with regard to train schedules, you can see there it's quite low. The issues we face west of Hudson are the issues of a very limited infrastructure. It's very expensive to add train service. We do not have a yard any place between Suffern and Port Jervis. That's a distance of 70 miles. So it's very difficult to add trains that run, let's say, 50, 60 miles out, which is where our customers are. Both of these are single-track railroads, so that's a real struggle to continue to add service. And I do want to mention as well at this point that with regard to the Bill of Rights for Metro North, Helena mentioned for Long Island Railroad, we are still working on it with the state of Connecticut as well as with our Citizens Advisory Committee, and we're anticipating over the next few weeks we'll be finalizing, just like similar to Long Island Railroad, the Bill of Rights or a pledge to customers. So we're still working on that. I don't want anyone to think that it's just that we're not part of that. We are, and then we too will be posting it in the same fashion as Long Island. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Howard on the Metro North customer survey? Anyone? One thing I'll say about the cleanliness of onboard restrooms, I think it depends on whether you're the first person, the second person, or the 15th person in the restroom as to how clean the restroom is, especially since there's nobody on the train cleaning the restroom while the train is going. So I find that rating not as important as all the other ones, obviously, because that depends to a large degree
to that
on
point,
when you get there.
Right. We actually go out and we have service people who check the restrooms before the trains leave the yard, and the cleanliness and everything. The scores are extremely high,
right?
As you just pointed out.
If you're the first person there,
right?
In.
As
yes.
it gets
if
used,
you're the first person,
right?
Yes. Just like home. Okay.
All right. So I guess I have two action items.
Action item, page 107.
Right. So on
Connecticut fare increase.
Right. So this.
After we just finished talking about fares.
Is this me? Yeah. Right. So we're asking here. We are asking the board approval for to approve these fare increases that have been requested by the state of Connecticut. We had public hearings in August and September. These changes would be basically it's 5% over the next 3 years. In addition, I do want to point out that the fares at Ryan Portchester will be raised to slightly beneath the level that the board approved as part of the last fare increase, but we couldn't do that because the Connecticut fares were too low. So that will be happening as well on January 1st. And so here we are asking for your approval.
Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Second. All in favor? Okay.
Okay. Then
Page 125, North White Plains Parking Garage.
Right, so per the MTA parking policy, we need to bring a project to the board for your approval before we proceed on a parking project. So this is what we're asking your approval today. This is a major improvement at North White Plains that would enable us to build a garage on property we own when we bought 525 North Broadway. So we own the property. We completed over the past few years, we've been doing an environmental assessment. We completed it. We received from the FTA the finding of no significance in June, and now we are going to ask your approval. We have another item later asking you to approve the 30% design so we can proceed then to do this a design-build project. So we're asking your approval.
Motion to discussion? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
Procurements. Long Island Railroad starts page 144.
There are 3 Long Island Railroad procurements in this month's package totaling $21.9 million. There is one item in the non-competitive section totaling $5 million and 2 items in the competitive section totaling $16.9. The item in the non-competitive section is a contract to Vaporstone Rail Systems. This is a 30-month contract where they provide on an as-needed basis complete systems, spare parts, and other equipment, technical field support, and repair services. These repair and replacement parts and systems and services are required to ensure that the HVAC systems are maintained and operating at peak performance. May we have a vote?
On the non-competitive for the Long Island Railroad. Any motion? Charles?
I have a couple of questions.
Go right ahead.
When was the original HVAC contract let? Do you know offhand? Year, not month.
What year? My sense, Jim, are you here? He may.
My concern is really the sole source issue. And I'm wondering if you could give some thought to the following. In the future, can we factor in awarding contracts, a factor you deem appropriate, if these are, the parts are only available from that provider as contrasted with a broader availability, so that perhaps we can aid ourselves in the future in terms of having competition?
And that actually is something that we are working with the Oliver Weinman team on as well as we go forward with the new procurement to determine whether there are better arrangements with suppliers over the life of the car. So we will work with that, and we will take this to that team as well.
Could you keep me posted, please?
Yep.
I think we already voted on that.
Okay, so-
Page 150, Long Island Railroad competitive.
And we are requesting board approval to award a construction contract not to exceed $8.2 million for rehabilitation of the Queens Boulevard Bridge. As you recall, this is a two-part effort. We did the deck at the rail side, and this is now the underside of the rail bridge that goes over Queens Boulevard. The second is a request to award 2 miscellaneous service contracts pursuant to a formal competitive bid solicitation, and these are for snow removal services, and we request a vote on the competitive procurement.
Motion to approve?
One question.
Go right ahead. I'm sorry. Go
If
right
you
ahead.
take a look at page 152, the gap between the third bidder, Echo, and both the first and second bidders is vast. Do they know something that the others don't? I mean, you're talking about $5 million.
That is very true. We hope not. We hope they don't know something that nobody else knows.
My concern is if there is some information, because the gap here is enormous, comparatively at least, perhaps we're going to wind up getting supplementary requests from some of these folks who bid low and then come back in to ask for additional money. It's just worth looking at your convenience.
No, that is always one of our concerns. This was a very detailed back and forth on the BAFO to make sure that it was a, valid, sustainable offer, and we will be watching this closely.
I appreciate that.
And Charles, you're not the only one who is concerned about that. I get concerned when we do change orders, and the change orders make, in addition to the original contract, make it higher than the second bidder. Okay? And so, right, and time the amount of the contract. And that's always been a concern, and we've asked, I know at least I've talked to Helena about pinpointing that, and I think we might want to do that for the entire, all the family, to showcase when that happens so that the board understands. Now, sometimes there may be a good reason for that happening, change of circumstances, something that was not seen, but sometimes I get the impression that's not always the case, and we'll talk to them about doing that. Motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry.
I
Go ahead,
agree
Joe.
with that point that you guys just made. I think it's very important that we do it system-wide.
Yes.
The change orders, the non-competitive bids, when you're looking at the amount of the change as a percentage of the original contract, the amount of the change that would bring it to compare for us, apples with the previous competitive process, including what was included or not included in the competitive evaluations. That would be very important. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you, guys.
We will take care of that. Thank you. I think we've had a motion and a second on this. All in favor? Aye. Okay, there are no ratifications. Non-competitive Metro North, page 146.
Right, so we have 3 non-competitives totaling $631,000. They're described in the book. Basically, one is for certain type of snow melters. The second is for a digital voice recording system so that we'll have recording of our communications in train yards. And the third is for the inspection, testing, and certification of fire suppression systems. So if there are any questions.
Any questions? Jim?
Just a question on the fast tracks.
Right.
Are those applicable to the Long Island operation? Is that something that would interest them, or it looks like a great addition, certainly, to our arsenal against snow?
We will take a look. We have been working on some additional snow strategies as well, and my sense is our teams have probably already consulted.
Right.
I'm convinced the best snow strategy is no snow. Since unfortunately we can't do that, we have to come up with other options. Any other questions on these? Motion to approve, second? All in favor? Aye, okay.
Okay.
Competitive, on page 154.
Right. So we have 3 competitive procurements. The first one is procurements for bus services. And let me just take a minute to speak to this. This is very important to Metro North. Not only do we spend a significant amount of money, but when we have either planned or unplanned service disruptions, this is critical for us to be able to provide alternative service. Last seen, for example, in the Port Jervis service, and when we have different events, the ability to get buses, sufficient number of buses quickly to the scene is a major challenge. So we actually re-engineered, or you call it process reviewed, this entire effort. We've come up with a new way to do this, which fundamentally involves 2 things. We have memorandums of understanding with the public provider agencies, so we always know that somebody will provide the service, those providers being either Connecticut Transit, Westchester County, or New York City Transit, the bus system, MTA bus. Then on top of that, we have layered private sector contracts, which we're laying out here, asking your approval for, so that we also have their availability under much more favorable contract terms than we ever had before. And then in the case of different events, we'll now be able to make a choice as to who to use, depending if it's something, for example, track work that we know months in advance, they can bid against each other. If it's an emergency, it comes down to more who has the buses available at the location and time we need them. But those two together, we think will get a better response, and we will save some significant amount of money. We identified, we think, 15 to 20% of what we're spending on buses. So that's the first thing. We also, as part of that, needed to add money into the old contract because of all the efforts last winter in the Danbury washout. You may recall I showed that when that got washed out. And then we also need to extend the contract for the remainder of 2011. These new contracts start January 1st. The other procurement that we have is for Gannett Fleming, and this is to do the 30% design on the North White Plains garage, which will then allow us to do a design-build contract. This is based, we had originally given them the contract for the environmental assessment work. We held this back because we needed to get the FONSI from the FTA before you would award this contract. We now have that, so now we want to award it at this time.
Any questions on either of these two? Charles?
I have one on each.
Yes.
With respect to the bus service coming in, and given the spectacular job that has been done by MTA Bus in terms of filling in in that area, has any thought been given to using them on a priority basis to fill in so that MTA Bus rather than...
Well, Charles, we want to look at, I think there are a number of factors. They're not always the cheapest, first of all. They can't always do the work. They have helped out in Connecticut. It's a little bit harder, and when we get into some of the Connecticut routes, keep in mind some of these dispatchments, for example, at Port Jervis, they were sending buses up from Queens 100 miles every day just to deadhead buses. So that is not an effective operation or an efficient operation. So, but I will tell you, but just know, I think it's important to know that on major events, we always know we have MTA Bus, and they come through. It may take them a while to get people from Queens into Connecticut or something like that, but they always come through for us, and so which is very positive.
Go ahead.
And the second question I had related to the modification on page 155. I don't understand something. It says in the second paragraph, at the time the initial award to Gannett Fleming was made, MNR anticipated returning to the board for approval to commence the 30% design. Then you indicate that couldn't happen in time. Right. And then you say, so MNR on that date proceeded with this award to Gannett Fleming for the 30% design. Why didn't you come back in between June and now?
Well, that's a fair question. I can't answer that. Anthony?
I'm not sure exactly when we received approval.
Could we get an answer here?
Yeah,
Because
let me get back to
this
you
is
on that.
inconsistent.
Yeah, I understand. We'll get back to you.
On that paragraph?
Yeah.
Okay. With that, any other questions on those items? Motion second. All in favor? Aye. There is a ratification on page 167.
Yeah, these are, as I mentioned before, this is the Port Jervis ratifications, and so we're asking here for 7 contracts totaling $6.2 million. And let me just say 2 things on this. What we tried to do wherever we could, we tried to have competition. And so we would have, for pre-approved suppliers or companies, we would have 2 or 3 bid for a certain amount of work, but do it in an expeditious fashion. There are many times when only one company had the type of equipment we needed, and we just needed them to work. So, and those are the cases where we just gave it to them. But these are the ratifications, basically, to bring the Port Jervis line back.
Any questions on this item? Motion to approve? Second. All in favor? Aye. Capital Construction, page 161.
David? Capital Construction has 4 procurement items this month, all of which are competitive and total $2.5 million. The first item requests board approval of a competitively solicited and negotiated miscellaneous service contract to complete the configuration of the Enterprise Leno system under the IESS C3 System Control Center. The second and third items are requesting board approval of modifications to East Side Access contracts. One's for the Manhattan Structure Part 1 contract for drainage niches. The second is to replenish a contract allowance for the Queens Board Tunnel contract. The last item requests board ratification of a modification to the East Side Access Harrow Structures Part 1 contract for the support and bracing of 2 existing catenary poles to mitigate potential ground movement during the tunnel operation by the adjacent Queens Board tunnel contractor.
Any questions on any of these items? Motion to approve? Second? All in favor? Okay. In view of the time situation, the operational and finance reports and ridership reports are obviously in the book. We also got the September operations and ridership reports emailed to us. Instead of going line by line, I would prefer if there are any questions that anybody has on any of these items, now is the time.
Quick thing.
Yes, Ira.
Yeah, on looking at the performance report, the on-time performance for PM Peak for Huntington, Port Jeff, and for Montauk, it's pretty bad. And I just wonder what's being done to improve those. And Ronkonkoma.
Okay.
We should not forget Ronkonkoma.
We're approaching it two ways. And of course, it's skewed this month by the event that we had on the 29th.
Year to date.
Yeah, year to date. We're making headway. Until we had the problem this month, we were up about 1.4%, so we're making some improvement. Even though it's reflected in the branches that you mentioned, the issue a lot of times is being able to make up the time. So what we're looking at is the corridor between New York and Penn. And we're doing that in terms of, applying resources there so that we can react.
Yeah, the only other thing which I noticed it's also on the web is there's employee but also passenger accidents. And I know especially escalator. I know I asked that last time if there was some reason for that or some particular situation that's causing more escalator accidents.
We did have one escalator accident that had multiple people where the escalator stopped and multiple people fell. But other than that, there's no pattern.
Charles?
If you look at page 24, you see again this significant standout in terms of the Huntington branch with its standees. Would that be alleviated in any worthwhile degree by just adding an additional train in the area? Because I understand you can't increase the platform because we're not getting cooperation from the local town. But is there any way we can alleviate it?
Go ahead, Ray.
If we had the resource, we could eliminate it by operating a train. We talked about the infrastructure at Huntington. We could look into adding something from Hicksville that would at least alleviate that western part of the trip.
Adding what?
Another train.
Another train.
Right.
From Hicksville,
From
but not
Hicksville
from
west.
Huntington.
Yeah, since we can't get into Huntington because of the infrastructure problems that we discussed, we could maybe turn something at Hicksville. But again, that's a resource we don't have right now.
How much would that? Could you at some point let me have some numbers to tell me what we're talking about?
Sure.
Thank you.
I think on all of these issues, that's a expanded service issue, goes with the other issues we talked about.
It's repetitive.
And there's no question about it.
It's repetitive here.
And
Same numbers each time.
And I think this board has a responsibility in the next month to work with ourselves, the Finance Committee, and the acting chair or new chair, depending upon when that happens, to try to alleviate some of these concerns. It just doesn't happen on the railroad. It's on Metro North. It's on all of them. Is there any ability to restore the services we reduced? Because what ends up happening in Huntington is exactly that situation, and it occurs in other places also. And I think this board has to take a very hard look at that. I know from my perspective, I would love to be able to do that. It's a question of how we can do it.
I would only add, if I may, that there is some value in focusing on it periodically.
Yes.
Because perhaps it will remind those who have
Absolutely.
the ability to control the purse string that they're being watched.
And some of that is us. Jim, did you have something? Your light is on?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other items? First of all, I want to apologize to the staff for not getting to you today. This was a very, very important meeting with a lot of very important information. And you didn't get the dire of the questions that other people got today, but we apologize for that. We will be using, based upon an agreement between Jim and myself, we will be using this order of agenda from now on, and the book will now reflect it. We think it provides us a better opportunity to spend more time on the items that are very important, and that's very important, especially when we're spending money on procurements and action items. These are items that should not be relegated to the back. They're very important to do so, and we're going to continue to do that in the order of agenda as we go forward. With that, if there's nothing else, motion to adjourn. Thank you all very much.